Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Jessica Chambers? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case. I'll move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Jessica Lane Chambers was born on February 2, 1995, and grew up in Cortland, Mississippi. This is about an hour south of Memphis, Tennessee. It is a small town with a population of only about 500. Jessica's parents, Ben and Lisa, divorced when she was young. Jessica graduated from high school. During her time there, she was a cheerleader. After high school, she considered a career in nursing as she worked in a clothing store and functioned as a drug dealer. She had been arrested for the latter activity. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On December 6, 2014, at around 5:15 p.m., 19-year-old Jessica arrived at a local gas station in her Kia Rio. She purchased $14 in fuel. Jessica called her mother and said she'd be back in a little bit. She then drove to another home in Cortland. After leaving there, Jessica made her way to the nearby town of Batesville at around 6 p.m. She returned to Cortland at around 6:30 p.m. She called her mother at 6:48 p.m. Her mother said it was quiet in the background. It would appear as though Jessica normally had music playing in the background when she called people from her car. At 7:35 p.m., Jessica arrived at Huron Road, which was about 1.5 miles from the gas station where she fueled earlier. At 8:10 p.m., a motorist contacted the authorities and reported a vehicle on fire on Huron Road. When responders first arrived, they noticed Jessica's vehicle on fire and started working to extinguish the flames. They noticed a figure walking toward them from the direction of nearby woods. The figure had burns covering over 90% of their body. This was Jessica, but the first responders didn't know that yet. They described the scene as something out of a zombie apocalypse movie. The figure was barely recognizable as a woman. Jessica said, "Help me," to a firefighter and said, "I'm going to die." Several firefighters asked Jessica, "Who did this to you?" She responded with the name Eric or Derek. It was hard to understand what she was saying. She was loaded into an ambulance, at which time a paramedic asked her, "Did Eric do this to you?" Jessica responded with what sounded like the word no. Jessica was flown to a hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. She died there the next day, December 7. Here's what the police discovered during their investigation. The keys to Jessica's vehicle were found in a ditch by a man pushing his child in a stroller. The keys were not far from where Jessica was spotted by the firefighters. Jessica's boyfriend, Travis Sanford, was in prison for burglary at the time of the murder. The police could not find any evidence connecting him to the crime. It was not all good news for Travis. Several years later, in March of 2019, he was shot and killed with a shotgun during a dispute over a dice game. Either that was a very high-stakes game of dice, or whoever he was playing with misinterpreted the term loading the dice. The contacts in Jessica's phone did not include anyone with the name Eric or Derek. She was friends with two people named Eric on Facebook, but both of them were excluded as potential suspects. The last text message that Jessica received was from a gang member named Quentin Tellis. He had a number of run-ins with the law, including convictions for burglary and fleeing from the police. The police questioned Quentin about Jessica. He said that he had seen her for about an hour in the morning, but that was it. The police analyzed cell phone data and found that Quentin's phone was near Jessica's phone until around 7:30 p.m. They had both traveled to and from Batesville together. The police told Quentin what they discovered, and he changed his story. Now he was saying that he was with Jessica until around 7 p.m., at which time a friend picked him up. The police were suspicious about this. They probably found it hard to believe that Quentin had any friends. The police spoke to this friend, who said that he was at a football game in Nashville, Tennessee. The friend had not been with Quentin that night. the police were able to confirm the friend's story. After collecting other evidence, the police became convinced that Quentin murdered Jessica. Here was their theory of the crime. While in the driveway of his residence, Quentin tried to have sex with Jessica, but she resisted. He became angry and choked her until she became unconscious. Believing that he had killed her, Quentin started thinking about how to get rid of her body. He drove Jessica's car to Huron Road so the vehicle would not be found at his home. Quentin made his way on foot to his sister's residence. On this trip, he dropped or threw Jessica's keys. After arriving at his sister's residence, Quentin took her vehicle and drove back to his home to pick up gasoline. Then he returned to where Jessica was. He set Jessica and her vehicle on fire before fleeing. Quentin sent a text message to Jessica's phone, making it sound as though they were going to meet, but he had to cancel the plans. He then drove to a store in nearby Batesville to establish an alibi. By the time Quentin was charged with Jessica's murder, he was already in jail in Louisiana after allegedly using a stolen credit card from a different murder victim who was killed in July of 2015. Later, Quentin would be charged with that woman's murder as well. Quentin went to trial for Jessica's murder in October of 2017. The jury could not reach a unanimous decision. A mistrial was declared. In September of 2018, Quentin went on trial again. The jury was unable to reach a verdict, and a mistrial was declared. At the time making this video, the state has not announced whether or not they will try Quentin for a third time. It appears as though they are waiting to see what happens in the Louisiana murder case, because if Quentin is convicted in that murder, he will face a mandatory life sentence in Louisiana. I guess the state of Mississippi is thinking that there's no sense in spending the money to try him if he's already in prison for life. Now moving to my analysis. Was Quentin guilty of Jessica's murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he was guilty, starting with the inculpatory evidence. Quentin lied about when he was with Jessica on the day that she died. He made up a story about being with a friend. Quentin was the last person to see Jessica alive. He said that he had sex with her in her car. He mentioned that the passenger seat was all the way back, which is how it was found in her vehicle after the fire was extinguished. On the days leading up to her death, Quentin repeatedly asked Jessica for sex. On the day she died, he asked her 4 times and was rejected each time. Quentin's DNA was found on Jessica's car keys. The ditch where the keys were found was along a path between the crime scene and the home of Quentin's sister. Video surveillance showed a vehicle owned by Quentin's sister stopping at Quentin's residence at 7:50 p.m. before driving toward the crime scene. At Quentin's home, there was a shed with a gasoline container inside. This lines up with the theory that he was picking up gasoline. The police were able to determine that Quentin changed his clothes 3 times on the day that Jessica was murdered. Within an hour of Jessica's death, Quentin deleted all communications that he had with Jessica. In addition, he ceased contact with her, which seemed unusual considering they had been frequently communicating over the last few days. A witness testified that she picked Quentin up on the night Jessica was murdered. He seemed nervous and sweaty. Jessica's identification of somebody named Eric or Derek is unlikely to be accurate. Experts testified that the damage Jessica sustained from the fire rendered her unable to speak intelligibly. In addition, it's likely that she was disoriented. Anything that she may have said to first responders should be interpreted with a great deal of skepticism. Moving to the exculpatory factors, there were no witnesses to the crime, no video. The DNA on Jessica's keys could be explained by the fact that she had contact with Quentin, like perhaps he handled her keys at some point during a non-homicidal interaction. Jessica appeared to identify somebody named Eric or Derek as her killer. Jessica lived a dangerous lifestyle that involved selling drugs every day. This undoubtedly brought her in contact with people who may have been more homicidal than typical residents of the area. When considering all the evidence, do I think that Quentin Tellis was guilty of Jessica's murder? Yes, I think he was guilty in reality and guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It actually seems like a clear-cut case. It's concerning that two different juries could not come to a unanimous decision of guilty. Something happened with the first jury that I think may shed light on the problem. Like all juries in criminal cases, the jury members were informed about how they needed to vote unanimously in order to get either a guilty or a not guilty verdict. The jury did not understand this concept. They thought that if some of them voted guilty and others voted not guilty, that meant the defendant was not guilty. Initially, this is what they told the judge. They declared Quentin not guilty. The judge asked if everybody agreed with the verdict, and several members of the jury said they didn't. They thought Quentin was guilty. The judge sent the jury back, and an hour later they came back hopelessly deadlocked. It seems clear from this story that not every member of the jury had good critical thinking skills, or maybe any critical thinking skills. Here's what I think happened with this jury and with the second jury as well. The members of these two juries heard a lot of testimony that was damaging to Quentin. The evidence of his guilt was really overwhelming. They also heard the first responders talk about what Jessica may have said. Again, she implicated someone named Eric or Derek. A number of the jury members had insufficient critical thinking skills, therefore they did not know how to weigh the evidence. To them, Jessica's alleged statement was as powerful as all of the inculpatory evidence. Because Quentin was not named Eric or Derek, or anything like that, this created what they believed to be reasonable doubt. Experts testified that due to her physical condition, Jessica probably didn't say anything meaningful. Again, here we see several jury members who were unable to understand the difference between first responders testifying about hearing Jessica say something and experts who examined her body. A few jury members dismissed the testimony of the experts. In this particular case, the mistakes these juries made is academic, because it's quite likely that Quentin will be convicted of the murder in Louisiana and spend his life in prison there. But that doesn't make the lack of critical thinking skills any less terrifying. It's difficult to imagine what kind of deficit in reasoning ability would lead them to putting so much weight on Jessica's statement. If Jessica had implicated Santa Claus instead of Eric or Derek, I could picture Quentin telling his defense attorneys, "Whatever you do, don't dress up as reindeer." Moving to the next item, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. This case seems pretty straightforward. I think the prosecution conceptualized the case correctly. Quentin wanted sex from Jessica, she kept turning him down, he choked her into unconsciousness, and he tried to destroy the evidence with fire. Quentin is a career criminal who is sadistic, excitement-seeking, deceptive, lacks impulse control, and lacks empathy. To Quentin, setting Jessica on fire was no different than setting her vehicle on fire. She was not a human being to him. Her terrible suffering did not matter. Quentin was simply trying to escape responsibility, and he did not care how he did it. The last item I want to touch on comes from how the police investigated this case. They believed that Quentin did it, but of course they had to chase down every lead. They spoke to hundreds of people named Eric and Derek as part of this process. They wanted to exclude all those people. They talked to everybody with those names that could have possibly been involved and asked them for their cell phones. They looked at the location data, and if the phone was not near Jessica when she died, the owner of the phone was excluded as a potential suspect. Investigators put a lot of faith in cell phone data. A few thoughts occur to me. One, the only thing that cell phone data proves is that the phone was not the killer. It is possible for the owner of a phone not to be with the phone. In this digital age, it's hard to believe that a person could ever be separated from their phone, but it does happen on occasion. Two, a master criminal should always put their phone somewhere else during their crimes, like maybe put the phone in a vehicle that is driving around away from the crime scene. This, of course, could backfire if the phone travels near where another crime is committed. Which brings me to 3. An innocent person should never let a serial killer borrow their phone. Those are my thoughts in the case of Jessica Chambers. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.